Terrorism has been around as long as mankind, only varying in its form and motivation. We have done several videos on domestic terrorists, individuals who took radical action to create pain and suffering through their personal motivations. But there have been many acts of terror in the U.S., many domestic, but also foreign in origin. Each time an attack occurred, one would hope that valuable lessons were learned. Sadly, that does not always seem to be the case. But as technology and religious radicalization have increased over the last few decades, the effectiveness and dedication of terrorists, whether individuals, fanatical groups, or even state-sponsored acts, have become far more prevalent and problematic. How has America been targeted by terrorists? How many times have we had a major attack? Why are we even more vulnerable now than in the past?
Hello, I'm Colin Heaton, former history professor, Army and Marine Corps veteran, and welcome to this episode of Forgotten History.
After Joseph Biden reversed the security actions by his predecessor, Donald J. Trump, an estimated 20 million illegals from almost 200 nations have poured into the United States, most through the southern Mexico border, although the Biden administration has flown in thousands, courtesy of the U.S. taxpayer. Since fiscal year 21, 362 aliens confirmed on the terrorist watch list have been caught crossing our southwest border illegally. How many got through, we have no idea. Encounters at the northern border in April of fiscal year 24 increased 1,240% compared to April of fiscal year 21. Immigration officials recorded 736 encounters with suspected terrorists still being vetted, and they span over 100 nations. But attacks against the nation, especially against civilians, is nothing new. We will provide just a few examples to lay the historical groundwork. For example, the British practiced a program of terror during the American Revolution, burning churches, homes, and towns, and in the War of 1812, they burned the White House, Capitol building, and a good part of Buffalo, New York, etc. During the Civil War, both Union and Confederate soldiers and guerrillas committed atrocities against civilians, burning and destroying towns, homes, and committing murder. Confederate William Quantrill and his raiders murdered and burned their way through Missouri and Kansas. Union General William Tecumseh Sherman torched his way through Georgia and burned Atlanta, and many civilians died. During World War I, Germany inserted and utilized saboteurs, who created a fifth column in 1915, 2 years before the U.S. was in the war, and they destroyed munitions factories, docks, and fires broke out on ships at sea. Such events as the Vanceboro International Bridge bombing, blowing up a barge carrying 15 tons of refined gunpowder just off of Harbor Island, Seattle, Washington, using biological warfare sabotage programs against cattle, the Black Tom explosion that killed 4 people and destroyed some $20 million worth of military goods, which would be $560 million in 2024. The Kingsland explosion in Lyndhurst, New Jersey, setting off 500,000 rounds of 3-inch ammunition, and bomb attacks of various Ontario targets by Detroit-based Charles Respa and Albert Kaltschmidt. During World War II, Adolf Hitler actually authorized 2 teams of 4 men each to act as saboteurs in Operation Pastorius to inflict massive damage. Landing in New York and Florida in 1942, they came ashore at night in rubber rafts from U-boats carrying $180,000 in U.S. currency. 4 men led by George John Dash, age 39, landed on a beach near Amagansett, Long Island, New York, at about 12:10 a.m. on June 13, 1942. Accompanying Dash were Ernest Peter Berger, Heinrich Harm Heinck, and Richard Curran. On June 17, 1942, the other group landed at Ponte Vedra Beach, Florida, south of Jacksonville. Their leader was Edward John Caroling, with Werner Thiel, Hermann Otto Neubauer, and Herbert Hans Haupt. They also brought enough explosives to mount a campaign of destruction of infrastructure for 2 years, and brought maps, charts, and personal knowledge of the United States, as all 8 men had at some point lived in the U.S. and spoke perfect English. Their targets were American manufacturing, transportation, electrical distribution systems, dams on the Ohio and the Mississippi rivers. They were also going after the steel, iron, and aluminum manufacturing plants. Railroad bridges and hydroelectric plants affecting the water supply were also on their list. Their objective was to strike multiple targets several times to cripple the economy and instill fear and embed hostility towards the government by the citizens, since the government would not be able to stop the mayhem, creating political chaos. Disrupting the American water supply was a major priority, as they knew that in itself would rapidly cripple major areas affected. The ring was arrested before they did any damage. The Japanese also had their hand in attempting to use terror as a weapon, when in 1945 a Japanese balloon bomb exploded in Oregon, killing 6 civilians, 5 of them children. On March 1, 1954, 4 Puerto Rican Americans, Lolita Lebron, Irvin Flores Rodriguez, Rafael Cancel Miranda, and Andres Figueroa Cordero, fired guns into the House of Representatives, injuring 5 congresspeople. The attackers said they acted to demand independence for the U.S. territory of Puerto Rico. On March 1, 1971, the Weathermen, later known as the Weather Underground, exploded a bomb in the Capitol building, causing no injuries but causing $300,000 in damage. The leadership of the domestic terror group were Bernadette Dorn, James Mellon, Mark Rudd, and William Ayers, and they were all anti-Vietnam War and anti-government activists. They also had an extensive list of targets, such as the New York City Police Department headquarters, the Presidio Army Base in San Francisco, a Long Island City courthouse, and several banks in Boston and New York. Most of the bombings were preceded by a warning to prevent casualties. Ayers himself was involved in the previous New York City Police Department headquarters bombing in 1970 and the Pentagon bombing on May 19, 1972. On November 7, 1983, a bomb exploded on the second floor of the Senate wing of the Capitol late one night, harming no one, but it caused an estimated $250,000 in damage. A group calling itself the Armed Resistance Unit later claimed responsibility for the attack, saying it was in retaliation for military actions in Grenada and Lebanon. 7 people were eventually arrested in connection with that attack. Most people still remember the attacks on New York on September 11, 2001, which started a 20-year war. Fewer may remember the first World Trade Center bombing on February 26, 1993, when a truck bomb exploded in a parking garage of the World Trade Center in New York City, killing 6 people. Many people may remember the Boston Marathon bombing by radicalized Muslim brothers Tamerlan and Dzhokhar Tsarnaev, who planted 2 homemade pressure cooker bombs on April 15, 2013. Many other examples of domestic terrorism have been covered by Forgotten History, and many other terrorists have been caught before they could execute their plans. But how realistic is the danger to our infrastructure today? What about our power grids, transportation networks, and water supplies? During his January 2024 Senate hearing, FBI Director Christopher Wray warned Congress about a range of threats against the U.S., from Chinese hackers to heightened terrorist risks after the October 7th attack on Israel. During the hearing, Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina asked Wray if he saw blinking red lights, referring to warning signs the U.S. may have missed before the attack of 9/11. Wray said he has never seen a time during his decades-long career when so many threats against the U.S. were all as elevated as they are now, warning the senators he sees blinking lights everywhere. In a hearing about Chinese cyber threats in front of the House Select Committee on the Chinese Communist Party, Experts listed potential targets in the U.S., including infrastructure like water treatment plants, electrical grids, oil and natural gas pipelines, and transportation systems. Ray also stated, quote, "The CCP's dangerous actions, China's multi-pronged assault on our national and economic security, making it the defining threat of our generation. China's hackers are positioned on American infrastructure in preparation to wreak havoc and cause real-world harm to American citizens and communities if or when China decides the time has come to strike." Ray also added that China isn't just focused on political and military targets. "We can see from where they position themselves across civilian infrastructure that low blows aren't just a possibility in the event of conflict. Low blows against civilians are part of China's plan. The most important starting point is the role of the Chinese government." Ray also mentioned the app TikTok, saying, "The app's parent company is effectively beholden to the Chinese government, and that is what, in turn, creates a series of national security concerns in the PRC government's ability to leverage that access or that authority." Ray also specifically cited data collection on millions of users that could be used for all sorts of intelligence operations or influence operations. That's something that we wouldn't readily detect, which makes it even more of a pernicious threat. He also explained that cyber attacks and disinformation warfare can work in tandem, and cited efforts from Iran in the 2020 presidential election, where 2 Iranian nationals were involved in a cyber-enabled campaign to intimidate and influence American voters. Ray stated, "Obviously, AI will enhance some of the information warfare that we've seen from our foreign adversaries for quite some time. AI can enhance foreign adversaries' abilities to collect personal data and feed it into disinformation and influence operations. However, China is not the only threat. As Ray stated, we are, since October 7th, in a heightened threat environment from various forms of terrorist risk." Ray was talking about the massive influx of military-age men, Muslims from Africa and the Middle East, many coming from nations on the terrorist watch list. Ray also said that the biggest risk doesn't actually stem from an attack from groups in the Middle East, but rather an individual here in the U.S. who could be motivated by the events taking place. That would include terrorists allowed in courtesy of the Biden administration. Ray also added, "The biggest one is an inspired attack by the conflict in the Middle East, but an attack that's inspiring some individual here in a horribly misguided way to commit an attack. The risk is more likely to be a lone actor targeting so-called soft targets here in the United States, which is facilities, houses of worship, schools, places that people every day in America go. So to defend the public we all serve, we need to be mindful of that heightened terrorist risk." Ray also said that the Bureau is working around the clock to identify and disrupt potential attacks by individuals inspired by the Hamas attacks on October 7th in Israel. Ray stated, "There is currently no information to indicate that Hamas has the intent or capability to conduct operations inside the U.S." Ray said that in a written statement separate from his opening remarks, but he added, "Though we cannot and do not discount that possibility." Ray then said in that statement that the FBI is especially concerned about the possibility of Hamas supporters engaging in violence on the group's behalf, and the threat from a terrorist organization who may exploit the attacks in Israel as a tool to mobilize their followers around the world. In addition, Ray touted the work by the FBI, including that the FBI disrupted over 40% more cyber operations and arrested over 60% more cyber criminals than the year before, and that over the past 2 years, we've seized enough fentanyl to kill 270 million people. That's more than 80% of all Americans. Ray also wants U.S. senators to reauthorize Section 702 of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, which is set to expire at the end of this year. The law enables the U.S. government to obtain intelligence by targeting non-Americans overseas who who are using U.S.-based communication services. Ray also said, 702 is key to our ability to detect a foreign terrorist organization overseas directing an operative here to carry out an attack in our own backyard. Ray then added, "What are we going to say to the family whose loved one's care was sabotaged when a hospital was taken offline by a foreign adversary and the FBI wasn't able to stop the cyber attack?" But Ray failed to address one major concern that should really be considered, and that is the threat to the nation's water supply. With millions of potential terrorists now in the country, with the blessing of the Biden administration, and almost no follow-up on their locations and activities, this is a frightening prospect. Whether chemicals, poisons, or irradiated elements, short of an electromagnetic pulse attack to blitz the nation's grids, the water supply is our most important resource, and our enemies know that. There are no press releases or even discussions from politicians on either side of the political spectrum as to what is being done to secure these assets. Local, state, and federal law enforcement agencies seem ignorant, incapable, or perhaps disinterested in even addressing the issue. The average American lives off municipal water supplies, especially in major cities, whether that is water from the major rivers or the Great Lakes, or in more rural areas from underground wells. We can survive generally without electricity, although we will become a society thrown back into the pre-industrial revolution era. It would be tough, but we could get through it. However, modern society would lose its mental grip without cell phones, the internet, etc., but it would survive in general. But without clean water, safe water, we are doomed. Drinking, bathing, and growing food would come to an abrupt end. This would be a prime terrorist target. And it is sad that our leadership currently does not appreciate that fact.
Thank you for watching this episode of Forgotten History. If you liked what you saw, please click like, share, and subscribe. And if you would like to assist with the ever-increasing cost of production, please consider becoming a channel member and joining our Patreon page. Please check out our merchandise store. And thanks for watching.